a dream, just a post-sleep entertainment without a strategy and a plan. So there's no rhyme or reason to any order that I'm putting together here. Today just going to run through a few anecdotes, don't know how many, 3, 4, 5, 6. And some of them out of the sporting world, probably most of them out of the sporting world. I'll try and tie up some of these anecdotal lessons that have formed a part, and I didn't know at the time that they were, but they started to form a part of my value set and of plotting the path to our road out of poverty. I'm a bit slow, so I realise these things sometimes after the event, and these things become clearer to me. Happy to admit I'm a bit slow on some of these things, but our path to a slow burn out of poverty. As a young kiddie, I grew up listening to the ABC commentary of Rugby League. One of my favourite players became a guy by the name of Arthur Beetson, who I met many years later, 2007, at a schoolboy rugby league tournament. Carnival, probably one of the best offloading forwards in the game, and probably would make it today if he could put up with the training regime. Today we'd call it promoting the football post-contact, but Arthur could break a tackle or get his upper body through a tackle and put a pass on. Although defence strategies have changed, how we tackle, where we tackle, and whatever folks say, well, the game was more violent with regards to forearms, elbows, getting hit in the head. The game's much tougher today, a lot faster and many more contact situations. Of course, Arthur Beetson was also legendary in the fact that he captained the first Queensland State of Origin side in what could be termed a trial or a concept game, dragged out of reserve grade in New South Wales as, he was 35 or 36, to captain his home state in this State of Origin concept that has now become one of the huge money spenders for the game and a fierce rivalry. And for all the talk of wanting to remove violence, who can ever forget Arthur Beetson winding a few punches into Mclaren and his Parramatta teammate that then set the tone for State of Origin for years to come. So I used to play a lot of games with myself, against myself, in the backyard, even did the commentary. Played a little bit of rugby league at school, maybe 4 games in the last 2 years. There was just no other schools to play against. And I played hooker at that time and watched a few of the really good hookers from Tom Pass, Elwyn Walters, George Paponis, Max Krilich, Johnny Lang, Steve Edge. And it was quite fascinating how these guys controlled a game, and they controlled the game through possession flow back in the day of contested scrums. When it was decided I was going to go to a private school, I thought I'd better get a bit interested in this rugby union caper. So I started watching some of the Five Nations, Ireland, England, Scotland, France, Wales, on the ABC. They used to broadcast it on a Saturday afternoon, I think. And I became enamoured with, 1, the Welsh singing, and 2, these massive scrums. These things are so low off the ground. And probably the commentary of, was it Bill Mclaren? Oh yes, it is Bill Mclaren, and I have a video up, an Australia versus Scotland video, where there's a bit of a feature on Bill Mclaren. What a great man. So I'll link to that down below as well. And I don't think anyone can forget 1, 2, 3, 4 tries in that very famous Wallaby 1978 victory over the All Blacks at Eden Park. And of course the Ned Kelly bearded Greg Cornelsen breakaway or flank forward at the time of the side that scored those 4 tries. Another one of those vivid memories. I watched that game live. And I do have a little bit of video of that on my rugby channel, which is much more successful than any of my other channels. I'll put a link to that down below. I think it's Keith Quinn doing the calling. Greg Cornelsen came to Toowoomba at some stage in his career, originally out of New South Wales country, I believe, northern New South Wales, the Armidale region, and I'd also believe he made the Wallabies from there. New South Wales country was hugely strong in those days, and he came to Toowoomba, whether he was selling seeds for Pacific Seeds or whatever, but we ended up playing against him. He played some with the Toowoomba City Bears. Well, they were known as Albini then, and today they're known as the Toowoomba City Bears. Unfortunately, he was without the beard in those days and was probably well into the end of his career and just playing to keep active, but a good guy. Getting to school, I just decided to stay at hooker. Wasn't really anywhere else for me anyway. Wasn't big enough to play prop, still an odd-shaped body. And later in life, I did play a bit at tight head, which was quite enjoyable. I enjoyed that one-on-one. Wasn't going to be fast enough to play in the backs, and I didn't think skillful enough, so stayed at hooker. Now this is back in the days when the law basically said that you need to be good enough to survive against the people you're playing against, whereas today the law tries to take away any danger through someone being markedly bigger or markedly better than you. Don't know which is right and which is wrong, because you certainly learn some life skills when part of the object of the game is to stay out of a wheelchair. But I did figure out I was very flexible. I used to be able to put my almost put my nose on my chest and I could almost fold myself up into a small ball. Came in handy when you were getting destroyed. Anyway, so I stayed at hooker and thought that I wouldn't mind being in the first 15 one day, never thinking I'd be good enough. And still, even though I made the first 15, never thinking I was good enough. I think that was a mistake on a selection basis. I did it a little bit differently. I did it like a rugby league hooker in rugby union. All the rugby union guys always strike with only their right foot, whether it's on the left side or the right side. And the higher up the levels you go, the less opportunity you get to strike against your feet. But I found in these underage games, right up into under 19 and first grade here on the Downs, that I was pretty effective. I had pretty fast feet. I was able to take a lot of ball off the opposition feet. Did that make us any better team? Did that make me any better player? No, we still didn't win any games, even with a lot of ball, maybe 80%. By the time I'd reached A grade, I was only using my right foot to evolve into that. And I became that good at striking on opposition ball that I could sense when the halfback was going to feed it, and I was actually nailing it out of his hands. Some of the times I got penalised for going too early, and I could control the flow of possession. I do remember one day, I suppose I'd been 20, playing against Dalby for Institute, a couple of local clubs here. I took 13 tight heads off the Queensland country hooker. Did it help? Not really. He got a bit frustrated and a bit angry and wanted to go to Biff, but they still won the game. Really, I wasted my time and energy. Maybe we'd have lost it by more with a change in possession flow. So it didn't make me any better player, because the Queensland country hooker was clearly a better player than me. So there's a whole lot to the game, game sense, what you do around the field, your knowledge, your ability to read a game, all stuff I wasn't real good at. Got better at it, but more so when I became a coach, and that's a story in itself. There's a number of players out there, past and present, that can change the flow of a game. In my early days, I realised these hookers could, through possession flow, become a totally different role when scrums became uncontested. So I did make that first 15. I don't know, it was a dream. I never thought I'd make it. I was lucky enough to make all those A sides, including the first, even though I shouldn't have been there. As I mentioned in this previous video, there was a guy much better than me. He ended up getting the spot for most of the season when I broke my collarbone, so a bit of justice there. And it was one of those cases where I made it without a plan and without a strategy. In life, you're going to need a plan and a strategy. The other thing you're going to need to do is control situations. If we go back to my under 15 year in rugby union, we were playing the Southport school at Southport on our main oval, 15As, and reasonably late in the first half I ran into a ruck or a maul and let a few punches go. Ruck or maul breaks up. This particular guy in this picture here is hanging on to me, and he looked me up and down and said, my friend the hooker. And we broke up. He never touched me. In fact, he never touched me for the whole game, but he owned me for that whole game. So he came out for the second half and they were kicking off to us. He pointed to me and he said, I want the ball kicked to this guy. Every scrum he'd have something to say, as simple as, my friend the hooker, I wonder whether he survived. Anyway, this guy turned out to be Stephen Philpotts, who went on to play a little bit for Queensland, long-term player for East Rugby Union in Brisbane, club I played for on the Downs, played East a couple of times when they came to the country. Really good prop. Philpotts coached Queensland 2 Open Schoolboys in 2007, coached the Open Schoolboys #1 side in 2010. Obviously a great thinker of the game, as most people that play in the front row are. And this is him here in his gumboots in Canberra. He's wearing gumboots because it was wet. And by all accounts, I never met the guy. A great man, became senior prefect or senior border prefect, was a rower and a really good prop. But he owned me that afternoon and he controlled the whole situation. I didn't know what was coming. Never touched me illegally. So our neighbour, who was a bit of a nutter, his son, 7, 8, 9 years older than me, I suppose. He used to take me to some of the local club games when I was 11 or 12, and I quite enjoyed those afternoons. And I used to run the sand out to the Dalby kicker, and they were very successful in that time. Just a bunch of farmers, basically, in those days, trained together on a Thursday night and played together on a Saturday. Probably did some drinking on a Saturday night. Senior footy was like school footy. I don't believe to this day that I was good enough to play first grade. I was just in the right place in the right time in 1983. The guy who was the first grade hooker made Queensland Country and Queensland B, which meant he was away a lot. Seasons were structured a little differently back then. I got foisted into the role, and you learn a lot really quickly. So I left the club in 1983 and went to play for Dalby, which was 80 kilometres closer to my home. This club that I left in 1983, we won about 2 games. We were terrible. But in 1984, pretty much the same grouping of people. They got one guy up from Brisbane. His job relocated and he played a lot of A grade in Brisbane, which would be a level above A grade here. The guy from Queensland Country, Queensland B, was around much more. And in 1984, this team won premiership undefeated. Pretty much the same group of players, a year older. First undefeated premiership ever, and started a 4-year premiership run. A great deal of success through the 90s as well. So what was the difference? Just an attitudinal change. And that attitudinal change developed through the year. I'm not sure they expected anything earlier in the year, but as the wins started piling up, so did the attitude become more hard and more enforced. And I guess he and the Queensland Country guy drove that attitudinal change. Other teams were saying that these guys were just ruthless and relentless. So if you go back to dream, plan, strategy, control, and then ruthless and relentless in your approach to heading towards the dream or the plan or the outcomes of the plan and the strategy, there's a chance you're going to be successful. And success is many different things to many different people. One of the things on the whiteboard in the dressing shed was win at any cost. Not win at all costs, win at any cost. There's a little thing I'm going to throw in here from motorcar racing, and it's the right time to be throwing it in because the big Bathurst race is on this weekend. I don't even know what they call it these days, supercars, whatever. But anyway, Mark Larkham has typically done some sort of an intro each year for a number of years. I went back to look at the one from 2021 the other day, and it had been up on YouTube for a number of years, and for some reason it's been removed. Someone's decided to copyright it. In this particular one titled You Just Can't Do It, talking about the average Joe just can't do what these guys do. But the key killer line in there for me is these guys aren't frightened of dying or being killed on the track. Their fear is failure. Mark was an ex-driver, and he goes on to admit in the video that's been taken down that he never got to win it, never became a grade. He's got a couple of other videos up, and I'll link to both of them, but one in particular that is titled This Is Bathurst, where he takes you around the track. He's not in a car, he's got vision of the cars, but he's talking you through each of these corners, speeds, gears, braking. The second one I'll link to from Larko is, I think it's last year's 2024, where he sits down around a campfire with a family and a young kid. Also well put together. Interested to see what he comes up with tomorrow morning as I sit here on Saturday the 11th of the 10th. So this Bathurst caper, we did a lap around Bathurst I think in 2006 in a dirty old Mitsubishi Magna, and to this day I just wonder how these guys manage to do what they do coming off the top of the mountain. Depending on what part of the track you're on coming down the mountain, you could be doing, at a guess, between 80 to 200 plus kilometres an hour through those blind corners. You just can't see. So that's fine, you do it enough, you know the track, but you don't know what's parked, what's crashed, and you still have to push on. The 300 km/h corner out of Conrod Straight into what's known as the Chase, I found hard to pilot the old fully loaded Mitsubishi Magna wagon around at 60 km/h. And as Larkham says in his video, This Is Bathurst, it's the one place that a tonne and a half of race car doing 300 km an hour feels like a tonne and a half of race car doing 300 km an hour. The downforce applied to these things, which is another physics question, must be something. Love to see the calcs on that. So you combine a fear of failure, that'll be a constant theme in my life. I actually turn it into a little bit more than a fear of failure over the years, but that becomes a constant theme. If we just recap there, dream, plan, strategy, control of situations, and fearing failure, it may not be for everybody. It was starting to blend up in my mixing pot, for want of a better word. I didn't know at that time if I were to put my life to a song back then. The song hadn't even been written, but it would be I'm Still Lost and Running by that marvellous band Powderfinger. Don't know what I was running from, still probably don't know, but I was certainly lost, and maybe I still am lost. A few sporting anecdotes in there, and ones that I can continue to recall really vividly. A lot of terabytes up here in the old brain. I don't know what happens when all that fades. If it fades, in my case, don't know. These life lessons formed a part of crawling out of poverty over time.